Are we going live? Are we live? We are live.
All right.
So welcome everybody to another Distill 2014 Speaker Hangout. We are featuring speakers from Engine Yard's Distill Conference, which will be August 7th and 8th in San Francisco. For tickets, check out distill.enginyard.com/tickets. Before we start, I do have to mention that, like everything Engine Yard does, this Hangout is governed by our anti-harassment policy. So for more information on that, I believe it's actually at enginyard.com/anti-harassment. Or if you have questions, just email me at pj@enginyard.com. So with that, we have one half of the speakers that we expected today. So we will welcome André Arko, who is well known as being part of the Bundler core team. And basically, I think either I'm following him to every conference this year or he's following me. Either way, we keep hanging out at the same conferences all year long. And he'll be coming to Distill. So, André, welcome.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a human being. I live on Earth, trying to be as helpful as possible. I mostly do Bundlery things and Rails things and Ruby things. I've been going around this year at all of the conferences that PJ has watched me talking about how I'm working on a rewrite of the server client part of Bundler and Ruby Gems to make everything actually awesome and fast, unlike what we have now, which is neither awesome nor fast. And I am optimistic that that work will get finished sometime this year. I mean,
there's still much of this year left.
There is. I mean, I was optimistic last year that it would get finished last year, so.
So you're perpetually optimistic.
I'm perpetually optimistic that whatever year it is, I think it'll probably get finished during that year. Yeah. So at Distill, I'm going to talk about metrics and how they're not quite as straightforward and helpful as they seem.
Yeah, it's kind of an underhanded thing, because I think when I read all the descriptions, obviously, a few times to score them properly and get everybody aligned. When we originally looked at it, we were like, I thought it was like a pro metrics talk, and I was like, something doesn't jibe. Like the title, and so I read it again, and I was like, no, you're actually talking about how metrics can lead you down the primrose path to failure, basically.
Basically. I mean, and obviously metrics are a good thing. You know a lot more with a metric than you do without a metric. The problem is that there's so many people who are like, yay, I instrumented a thing, and now I know everything about it, and you don't. Yeah.
So was there like there was an underlying panic moment that led you to talk about this? It drove you
There was kind of like a many years of putting things into production and then realizing that what's a good example of this? Like, you know, it's when it dawns on you that your response time average is 75 milliseconds, and you're like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. And then you wonder why people complain that their requests never finish. And you're like, how is that possible in 75 milliseconds? Well, turns out that 75 milliseconds is an average, and 95% of your requests are taking 6 milliseconds. And the remaining 5% are taking, 700, 1200, 1800, and you had no idea. So that's cool. Stuff like that, basically.
Good times.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So I'm basically planning on making people feel uncomfortable and then scared and then depressed, and then I'll be like, thanks, any questions?
I got to figure out which room you're in so the MC knows that we probably need one of the mental health professionals that will be there on hand in the room.
Right.
For safety.
Yeah.
Davey, that's going to be your room, I think. Because you're a pro.
Looking forward to this talk.
Before I ask more questions, does anybody else have any questions for André? Because this is a pretty informal, casual chat.
I'm curious if you have like a common one that people get wrong, like people measuring. Oh, we've delivered so many emails, but of course you can't really tell, and the metric means nothing.
I like scarily enough, I feel like response time is the one that people like. So there's like layers of problems, right? The top layer of problem is that most graphs automatically show you the average, and that like doesn't actually contain information. I mean, it contains like some information, but it doesn't actually tell you something. Like you need more information than the average to know what the actual problem is if the number changes. You're like, oh, something changed. That's helpful. I don't actually know what changed. So like getting people away from averages so that they can start to get actual useful information out of their metrics is like step one. And then step two is like figuring out what the actual thing that you care about is. So I'm gonna like start giving away the entire contents of my talk here, but like the absolute most common one that I see there is people measuring their application stack response time. They're like, oh yeah, a request comes to our stack, we service it, it goes back out, we know how long that takes. We don't use averages, we have all these interesting percentiles, we know exactly how everything works. And then I'm like, okay, so how long does it take like a real life human being on the internet to make a request and get a response? And they're like, we don't know. And I'm like, wait a second. Like all the research about like user engagement and people giving you money and people being like, screw this, it's too slow, is all about like end user time. There's no like, well, if your application stack is this fast, then you get 10% more engagement. No, it's like the entire round trip request, you lose like 10% of your audience per 100 milliseconds longer it takes. And nobody knows how long it takes. So you're like, oh, okay, so one day the round trip takes 250 milliseconds longer, and whatever that means, like 15% of our sales just evaporate. Cool, we weren't even measuring that. Yeah, so like that I think is the like next level of like, we thought we were measuring how long it takes for people to use our website, but we were actually just measuring how long it takes Ruby to make our website, not how long it takes actual people who use the website to use the website. And those are totally different things.
Absolutely.
New Relic is kind of trying to work on these problems in interesting ways. They've added like insights and histograms and real user monitoring, and all of those things are like getting you closer to useful information. But they were definitely one of the like leading advocates of useless averages that don't actually give you actionable information for years. So I'm still like as good as much less bad as their new stuff is, I'm still a little bit bitter that they spent years telling people, here's how your app's doing, and it was like not your app, and it was not how it was doing.
As much less not bad.
I'm gonna quote too many negatives.
It's just very complicated. I thought I was gonna have to whiteboard that for a minute.
Yeah. I expect all my sentences diagrammed, young man.
That's why we record these things.
Yep.
Now that I know how to make stick figure stop motion animation on my whiteboard.
Excellent.
I got mad skills. Excuse me. So, Andre, you were at Distill last year, weren't you? Not as a speaker, but.
Yep. I attended. I was coaching the Rails Girls Summer of Code at the time, and the bundler team on Rails Girls Summer of Code, and they got Distill tickets, and they flew up from Southern California, and they did a lightning talk at Distill, and we got to hang out, and it was pretty great.
And if I recall correctly, they called you out on stage. They're like, and Andre's here, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, that may have happened. Possible.
Well, hopefully, if the two of them can get there again, you can do the reverse.
Yeah, that would be pretty good.
So let me ask, having known what happened at Distill last year, what are you most looking forward to this year?
The lawn games.
Everybody loves the lawn games.
They were great. Um, well, I mean, the conference was also pretty great, but the lawn games were amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's funny because I always feel like when I go to conferences, lunch happens and there's like this awkward 30 minutes
right.
of
Where where you
there's
like cross your fingers and hope really hard that you found someone to talk to for the awkward 30 minutes.
exactly. Otherwise, you're pretty much screwed for 30 minutes walking around looking like you don't know anybody.
Yeah,
And so we filled that with lawn games.
it was a good plan. I
Which,
mean,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say like at conference number 17, lawn games totally stand out. So that's good on you.
Yeah, how many conferences have you actually spoken at this year so far?
I think 9, but I would have to count carefully to be sure.
Yeah, I usually do a badge count.
Yeah,
Then I had 2 conferences without badges so far this year, so it's been real. The
yeah,
the metrics are way off.
they're totally off. Yeah, I mean, my problem is that all my badges end up in a drawer, but that drawer has last year's badges in it too.
See,
So then
I
I
always
can't.
I have a hook for 2013,
Oh, you have a.
2012.
I see.
Yeah, it's like scrapbooking except with a nail in the wall.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold you to that, PJ scrapbooking.
Okay, yeah. Although I will point out that scrapbooking is well known as the nerdiest thing you could possibly ever do, ever. Like, it's nerdier than LARPing, apparently. I saw a list.
Nerdier
Wow.
than LARPing. That's impressive.
Yeah, yeah. If you're nerdier than LARPing, that is impressive.
That is cool.
Hey Jen,
Hey,
welcome
I'm
to our
so
hangout.
sorry I was late. I got held up in a meeting.
It's
Oh,
okay. I have to account for the fact that people have like jobs that aren't
It's
that
so
aren't mine.
inconvenient. It's everything.
But no, this is perfect timing because Andre was getting tired of me asking him questions anyway. So um,
No,
yeah.
now you can ask me questions.
Geez, PJ, stop it.
yeah, this is so annoying. PJ asking questions, that's all he ever does.
Yeah.
So Jen, welcome to the Hangout.
Thank you.
Assuming that you are Jen and not just impersonating Jen Myers right now.
Well, yeah, I can't reveal for sure. Like, we just have to leave a little bit of mystery around it. Yeah.
This is the ultimate cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So you are speaking at Distill as on being a good mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So without giving too much away, since we already ran Andre through his entire talk, just by happenstance, what makes a good mentor?
Wow. Okay, so yeah, I'll start with an easy question, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
She'll
think
never be late for an interview with PJ again.
Yeah, I know, right? Honestly, like I think one of the main things is something that I talk about in a lot of contexts, but it comes down to empathy and being able to really understand what it's like for somebody else. And I think for a lot of us who have been doing the things that we do in our jobs for a long time, sometimes it's easy to forget what it's like to just be starting out or to learn something new. And it can be really intimidating and it can be kind of overwhelming. And especially like in the tech field when things move so quickly and there's so much stuff out there and there's 10 zillion frameworks and languages and, it's very overwhelming. And I think that especially for people who are just trying to get into the industry or trying to learn new things, having empathy for what that feels like and knowing how to look at something from somebody else's perspective is the best thing about being able to mentor and teach them something new. So I think it really comes down to that empathy and being able to see things from somebody else's perspective.
Right on. And are there better ways to kind of gain that empathy? Like, for example, like I'm a Rubyist. Davey here is a PHP guy. We all make mistakes in life. I'm just kidding. But I mean,
PJ.
for example, would it maybe help us to empathize with someone who's a beginner to grab a language that maybe we're not familiar with at all and try to find a mentor and then run with it and then apply what we've found in our mentorship of someone else?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's the great thing that I like about being a mentor and teaching is that you get to learn all these things about how you learn and the gaps in your own knowledge, and then you're able to use that to figure out what it's like to be in the perspective of somebody else. And so, I don't think any of us knows everything about anything. Even if you know a bunch of different languages, there's always something you don't know. Or like I'm a designer, developer, so I've always been kind of one of those people who is in both fields. And I hear the same thing from like developers, like I don't know how to design, I can never learn any of that type of stuff. Or designers who are scared of learning code and things like that. And it's kind of the same thing where I get it, but yeah, no, like just jump in and learn something else, and there's always something else that you can do that you can use to learn, and then you know what that feels like, and you kind of know how to express the things that you do know in a way that makes sense to people because you know what it takes.
Right on, right on. Very cool. Now you were not at Distill last year.
I was not. Unfortunately, I wanted to be, but I was not.
That's okay. We forgive you. We decided to do it another year to make sure everybody got a shot.
Yeah.
But do you, like, as far as what you know of Distill so far, besides the constant barrage of emails that I send out, what are you most looking forward to at Distill this year?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, generally what I like about going and speaking at conferences is I know this is going to sound totally cliched, but I swear it's the truth. Like, I really just like connecting with the people there. Sometimes it's a little strange. I do a lot of speaking, and sometimes people will send me emails or come up and like apologize, be like, I wanted to talk to you, but I didn't want to bother you. And I'm like, no, that's what I'm here for. And I understand, like, I appreciate that people are polite. Like, I don't want to put that down. But I really do like connecting with people and talking to people. And I think there's a really, really interesting group of speakers, and that usually means there's going to be an interesting group of attendees from what I can see about Distill. So I really just want to get into that crowd and talk to people and have good conversations. That's the best thing for me.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's funny because in the last Hangout that we had with Christina Truong and Blake Mizerani, which was last week, Blake said almost word for word the exact same thing. Like, I hate to be cliche, but I like the people.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of wish that we didn't have to say I hate to be cliche, because I always felt like, when I was a developer, and like I'll even give a great example involving Andre, if he doesn't mind. When I was first starting out in Ruby, I went to like RailsConf for the first time in Baltimore, and they had an Ignite event, and by happenstance, I happened to sit next to this very tall, beglassed, dark-haired gentleman who also happened to be sitting next to Aaron Patterson. And we sat together in a night event, and I think I chatted like a little bit with Andre, and since then we've increased our conversations through the years and become what I would like to consider friends, Ruby friends at the very least. But yeah, I mean, like, that's something that if I had never gone to a conference, like, I would never find a way maybe to approach Andre, who's like, a person who's well known in our community and does a lot of top level stuff with all the kids at the cool table. And I think that's the thing about conferences, is it really brings everybody to the same level. Like, yes, you are up on stage speaking, but then when you're done, you step down, and everybody's on the floor.
Right.
We're not all the same height, definitely, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Davey, we should have a contest for tallest speaker. I should find out who the tallest speaker is.
So I should wear my heels, right?
Yes.
Yes. This is an in-shoe measurement. I'm going to wear my heels.
You should.
I don't actually have heels.
Oh, okay.
Once I found out I was taller than Davey, I didn't care anymore. I was like, I win.
Yeah, well, I would just say too, like, on a serious note, I agree with you completely, and I had very similar circumstances with like people that I knew were giants in the industry who treated me like I was just somebody worth talking to and somebody worth having around, and that makes a huge impact on people. And it really made me realize, like, yeah, we're all here because we really enjoy this, and we're here to share it. And that's what is really important, and that's why I keep going back to conferences and talking to people, because that's my favorite thing to do.
Exactly. Now, I know that Andre said his estimate was about 9. How many, because I know of at least one other conference that you're speaking in that I'm also organizing this year. But how many conferences do you think you're speaking at this year, give or take?
This year, a lot. I do a lot of speaking now. I actually have a spreadsheet because I have to keep track of them. Yeah, I think it's about a dozen. But that is including that's not necessarily just conferences. It's meetups and things like that too.
Meetup, right on.
Yeah,
Right
so
on.
it's about a dozen.
Spreadsheet is such a good idea.
Yeah.
I've done 9 so far, but I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4 at least left this year. So like
Yeah.
Wow.
Spreadsheet. I
I should
recommend.
get on that. I should get on that spreadsheet business.
Yeah.
You know what? Spreadsheets, as much as we as developers make fun of spreadsheets, they're very important. That's all I'm saying. They're very important.
Here's a funny thing. I actually made a little app to keep track of my talks and all of that, and I still end up using my spreadsheets. So maybe that means I need to make a better app or something, but for some reason my spreadsheet just works better. I don't know.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I know that I'm scheduled, if you don't include conferences I'm organizing, conferences that are canceled due to gigantic overthrows of governments in the Ukraine, and other conferences that I just couldn't make it to. I think I'm at like 17 or 18 for this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Around the same. We have a spreadsheet that we keep track of our stuff in, and it's kind of crazy.
It has an extreme color coding tab, like, blue means that I was accepted, but I can't go to it because I'm going somewhere else, and
I was invited to this one, yeah.
Yeah, I was invited, but I can't go because it's in Singapore. Conferences. It's funny because I don't know. I always fancied myself a conference addict, and now like I feel like that's really been confirmed now that I'm lucky enough to like be selected or asked to go to all these conferences, and you go and you're just like, yes, it's another one, and you continue to ride that conference high.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is a high. I think somebody wrote an article about that, and I was like, yeah, this is disturbingly right on.
It's like a full-on adrenaline rush. But I think part of it is speakers challenge you to think about maybe how you were doing things or how things get done or how things should be done. And when you go to a good conference, and I think I've only once been to something that I would consider a bad conference or a poorly done conference, and that was one that I pretty much kept walking out of talks and was like, who selected these people? And I won't say what it was or anything, and that's not really important, but the point is when you go to a good conference, you should come away with that feeling of like, you know what, I'm going to go rewrite every open source project that exists, because I'm pretty sure after all the talks I've seen, I am capable of doing that. I don't know if other people feel the same way. That's just often after a good conference, that's how I come down, and then I make 8,000 pull requests and none of them get selected because they're all bad.
I often come out of conferences with, now I'm going to redo everything I've ever done in my entire life. Not everything open source, but everything I've ever done because I was wrong.
That's a good one. I definitely got that out of several conferences. I remember.
I like going to conference. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm in a habit now where I like going conferences where everything is completely over my head. So it's not enough to make me feel like I have to go do something. It's just enough to kind of make me feel like there's a whole other world out there that I haven't even gotten into yet, and it's kind of exciting. And I just kind of let it like seep into my head. There's a lot of talks at Strange Loop that were like that. So I'm like, I don't know if I have any idea what you're talking about, but I'm going to just like take it in and see what that happens. And that's kind of a cool thing too. It doesn't have to necessarily be associated with an action, even though action is great. Sometimes just like being exposed to new ideas and letting them simmer in the back of your mind is really fun too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're coming up to the end of our little half-hour jam session. I do, as a consummate way of ending any interview I've ever done ever, have to ask the two of you what your favorite superhero is. So whoever wants to go first, start talking now. Whoa, dead silence.
I'll go with Iron Man.
Iron Man? Okay. Jen?
This is a complicated question.
It's a very complicated question.
Well, and then also there's a layer of it. I've somehow created like my own meme on Twitter about Batman, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I am a very big Batman fan. So again, I know that's a classic answer,
Lo-
But
that-
I'm really into comics and all of that stuff. So if you want me to go granular, I can. But I'll go with a simple answer for now, and then leave an option for people to follow up later if they want to.
okay, I'm gonna put it this way, and Davey will back it. There's one correct answer to the question. The answer is Batman.
All right.
So you win. I did discover earlier from one of the other speakers. We did a quick interview with Robin Menner, and he came up with the only other acceptable answer, which unfortunately was not Iron Man. I know, Andre, a lot of people are like Iron Man is like the Marvel Batman. He's a rich guy with gadgets. It's basically the same thing. Yes, but his
Not the
parents
same
lived.
thing at all. Iron Man's
Not
way
the same.
smarter.
I'll get. You know what? I will give you that. That is absolutely true. He is smarter than Batman. Batman is good at HR and hiring the right people. But the only other
Employees,
answer that
though,
what?
keeping employees, though, he's not got a good track record with his Robinson.
That depends on which Batman you're talking about. There's so many Batmans. Batman?
But I mean, look at the impact that he had. Like Red Hood, Red Robin, a new Robin. Like, come on, it's
Nightwing.
Nightwing. Yeah, like he's branching out.
He basically spawned his entire Justice. He franchised.
Exactly.
I was even reading. I got a free comic book called what was it? Sirens of Gotham City or something like that. All about how all of the female heroes and anti-heroes, which is what I guess Catwoman is, like an anti-hero.
Batwoman, Batgirl, Catwoman.
Yeah, and all of them working together. And there was a part where the Riddler, who is now a good guy, I didn't get the memo on that, is interacting with Batman. He's like, there's something different about him, but I don't know what it is. And they're like, oh, I hope he never figures out I'm Dick Grayson. I'm like, Dick Grayson is Batman. Holy shit. Ooh, I'm not supposed to swear. Damn it. Anyway. I would like to thank myself for getting through 28 minutes of this without swearing. That's pretty good. Lauren, you know me well. You know that 28 minutes is like really good for me.
Congratulations.
It's the little victories, folks. But yeah, the only other acceptable answer that Robin Maynard provided was Deadpool. Deadpool is nearly as cool as Batman. Like 1 percentage point off. But with that, I'm going to stop the broadcast unless Joe, Lauren, Omni, Evan, anybody has any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Davey, do you have anything to say that isn't British and weird?
I don't know how to respond to that.
Joe, you're totally invited to karaoke night. There will be a karaoke night. I will tweet about that as we get closer to Distill. Yeah. So that's all I have. Andre, Jen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with us, and we will see you in August.
All right. See you then.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
Yeah. Bye.